This chapter has managed to somehow convince me that Justin is probably going to win this fight. Now that might come as a surprise to most people who have definitely been siding with Sakigake, and though his stocks are not as high as predicted basically, I would say most people are still betting on Sakigake. But I think this chapter that primarily focused on Sakigake has basically shown us almost everything, if not everything, about the character as well as what they can do, but I'll go into more detail about that at the end of the review and breakdown of the video. But for now, let's go into the chapter that is called Dance of the Scorpion, and the chapter actually starts off in the Ice Age Dragons underground fighting arena, which is a flashback to actually just 2 months back, with the current champion of Ice Age Dragons, who is called Oka Kenshin. Oka over here is facing off against Sakigake, and Oka seems to notice that, of course, Sakigake, being the challenger, may be a traditionalist karate fighter. Don't know what that specifically means, but we then get a bit more backstory, which I think is probably a bit more focused towards Sakigake, not like the type of speculation that we were having with the police department for organized crime in the last chapter. Here we get a narration of Sakigake, and we get his age reveal, which is 28, and how he is, of course, the child of the Dawn of the Boyo group, and that because of his position, he managed to get basically anything he wanted. It says he wanted for nothing, and usually when you use that type of phrase, it means whatever he wanted, he typically got. And so he's had a relatively, let's say, smooth life, which does contrast a bit more with Justin, who had his hood phase basically. But going back to Sakigake, he then eventually demonstrated that he had tremendous talent for karate and the martial arts that he was performing, and even won several tournaments at that, being called the Wonder Child of Tokai. So we have a prodigy here. Obviously, I mean, he is literally in this tournament. He came out of basically nowhere. And we get the reveal that at 23, so about 5 years before what his current age is, I think, he then transitioned over to underground fighting. We then get to see, of course, Sakigake doing his thing, basically using his jab against the champion of Osai Dragons, which is Oka. But unfortunately for Sakigake, he is now in close range of Kenshin, and Kenshin is to reveal to be a full contact karate practitioner, so he then proceeds to launch several blows at Sakigake's midsection, just rapidly saying there's no escape for him from this position, and that Sakigake probably can't get away from him. And apparently this is a style of martial art. It even has a name. It's called the Infinity or Infinite Punch. And it seems as though because of this attack, Sakigake is stuck at close range. But then all of a sudden we cut to behind Kenshin, where it seems like there is some sort of kick, mainly because we see one leg, which we are presuming is, of course, Sakigake's leg, because we see both of Kenshin's legs. And he gets hit in the head and instantly gets knocked out. And just like that, Sakigake became the champion of Ice Age Dragon. So we see here that this is basically one of his special moves, let's say, and that he had used this move to become the champion of Ice Age Dragons. But then we cut over to the present fight, of course, with Sakigake saying that he actually doesn't like full contact karate because it's not elegant, it doesn't look good. With Justin being like, excuse me, what did you just say? We then get basically what is, I'm going to call, a rant by Sakigake, where he calls it barbaric at some point for partial training, mainly because you can't strike people at the head, and a bunch of other objections that, of course, Sakigake has. Justin then, of course, replies saying he should probably be careful because they live in a diverse age, so he shouldn't be so intolerant. He should basically be woke about these type of things. But Sakigake, of course, he's ignorant. he is basically a bigot at this point. Like, come on, he's rich, he has never wanted for anything, and he looks down on other people. I mean, come on, guys. So many signs here that Sakigake is a douche, basically. With him thinking that his style of fighting is basically more elegant. So we get to see here that Sakigake's primary way of fighting, we've basically seen it. He likes the long range pokes, and mainly because, well, that's the way he simply likes to fight. It may not be as practical. He probably could learn to do more, but it just doesn't look elegant enough for him. And he just likes the idea of doing killing blows from long range. Then of course Justin replies saying if he liked long range attacks so much, he probably should have just become an archer instead of a fighter. Which then he starts of course to charge at Sakigake, which of course it goes basically the same it's always gone at this point, with a direct hit from Sakigake's fist to Justin's face, and that panel looks brutal. And that hit, it seems to be pretty powerful because it sends Justin back a little bit actually. But to Sakigake's surprise here, Justin actually recovers pretty quickly and manages to tackle Sakigake, and now Justin basically has Sakigake where he wants him, with Sakigake saying that of course this is actually pretty gross and that he actually doesn't like being down and dirty like this, with Yamashita saying that Justin has basically learned Sakigake's timing to a certain extent, so he's adapted to what Sakigake is doing, which good for him, props to him. But yeah, we are now in a grappling situation, and though Hiraku is doing good and of course Jerry is seemingly commentating, saying that Sakigake is doing well, but of course Justin is the person who's more well versed in this field of grappling, so Sakigake is probably gonna have to get out of that situation as fast as possible, with Justin managing to slip out of Sakigake's grasp and then putting himself in a position to be on top of Sakigake. But right before he can grab him, we then see Sakigake saying that he's going to show Justin something interesting. Basically saying, let me show you something, boy. Calling him just a straight up boy at this point. Saying that he's going to show them traditional karate's scorpion. And we get to see the scorpion kick, which was basically the move he used against Oka Kenshin, the previous champion of Aisei Dragons, to eventually beat him. So yeah, that's the reveal, and you can kind of see why, looking at this chapter, that we've probably seen everything that Sakigake has to offer as a fighter. He's basically a mid to long range poker who, if you manage to get up close to him, he will basically use the scorpion kick on you. One of the things that made Sakigake incredibly dangerous matchup for Justin, at least in terms of the eyes of the story, was the fact that he was a completely mysterious character, where people were like, of course he was a Fae clone or somehow Nico number 3, which were wild theories. Like, yeah, sure, they were wild theories, but because all those things were sort of possible, it means that Sakigake's jump in power could still be massive. So his potential was basically incredibly huge. But I think this chapter, at least for me, solidifies that this is where Sakigake is at. He is someone who has never really faced hardship. He basically values aesthetics over practicality. And so far he seems to have one answer to close ranged attacks. On the other hand, we have barely seen anything from Justin. We know the type of martial arts that he does. He's an MMA fighter with a mixture of boxing and wrestling. That's obvious. But his growth as a fighter we haven't really seen that part yet. And so I am now looking at this from the position of potential as characters and as fighters, and Justin simply has more to offer. Sakigake may be stronger, but he seems to have not leveraged that strength because it just, apparently, he just doesn't like how it looks. And maybe I might be going a bit too hard on Sakigake for this, but this chapter has pretty much just solidified me in the Justin camp. here. I think he is probably going to win. Justin no longer has the infinite potential that he had. I think we've seen basically the majority of what he could do, and now we are going to see what Justin can do next chapter, and he is probably going to win it at most 2-3 chapters from this chapter. But yeah, that's my thought. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and sub, and until next time, take it easy.